What is going on, everybody? BobbyFi with my man Eric Sheets-Haber. Hope you're all having a great Tuesday. Not a great Monday for me on DraftKings. Lost some there, but did have a really good day on FanDuel. Had a shot at winning, a shot at a little bit of an outside shot, but I needed a couple late heroics and didn't quite get there on FanDuel, but ended up in the top 20, I think, of the Grand Slam and the Monster, and I just played one entry in each of them. So it was, a solid night. Or no, I was, I think, a top 30 in the Monster, but still, it was a solid night. Felt good about most of the process and getting away from some of the chalk and playing a little bit more of the Houston, who had some ownership, but on a 7-gamer was pretty good. Sheets, how did you do last night? And what are your thoughts earlier on tonight?
I bubbled in the big one on DraftKings, which was a little annoying. FanDuel, I did okay in one of the single entries, and yeah, I mean, I was kind of happy with my decisions. I mean, Minor and Pineda did really nicely. I don't know how Garcia ended up doing, but I didn't play any of him. He had a bunch of strikeouts though. I think he had his
he had to get pulled.
I think he had a season high in strikeouts. No.
He had 8 strikeouts. I think it was 8. Yeah, he's had like 10 or 11 a few times, but he ended up with he was cruising along and then just ran into a bunch of trouble in the 5th inning, so didn't get the win, but still was fine enough. I mean, he was on the winning lineup on FanDuel to give you an idea what kind of a night it was. You know what I mean? So. One of those things, but
yeah, I couldn't get a lot of traction out of the Toronto guys. So yeah, I'm ready for tonight though.
Yeah, that was an interesting spot with Toronto last night because I was happily off. I knew they'd be chalky. I didn't realize to the extent of the level of chalk they were going to be. It was pretty wild. All right, let's jump into it. Let's go game by game. Why don't you pull up your screen because it's going to be a monster slate, and we haven't done the show in a while, so now it's maybe
I know.
Here. You've got that. This is a very mass entry slate, not just because there's so many wild cards for pitching, but also because there's tournaments out there that are, you've got all the cheap tournaments that you can mass enter in, and I feel like I'm sort of approaching the slate a little bit more with that mentality. Going to take a few more shots. Still want to condense my ownership, but there are a lot of ways to go pitching wise. So let's start off with Milwaukee, Pittsburgh. Brett Anderson, Tyler Anderson. Tyler Anderson would not surprise me the slightest bit if he had a decent game here. I don't think I'm going to get to any of them. He did, just for what it's worth, he had 28 fantasy points the last time these two teams played. And that was in the Better Hitters Park in Milwaukee. He's on my list, but he's further down my list. Are you playing either of these pitchers? I'm guessing obviously Brett Anderson's out, considering I don't think he'll pitch much anyway.
Yeah, I didn't really, one of the keys again to big slates is try to attempt to make a big slate somewhat smaller. And I think that this would be a kind of a cross-off game for me. I didn't really get so much of the pitching or the hitting here. Do you like any of the hitting as well, or?
For Pittsburgh, I actually do think that a couple guys grade out pretty good for me. Stallings at catcher, batting 5th at 3,600. Reynolds and Ke'Bryan Hayes, but realistically, there's going to be better plays. Oh, and even Nagowski, who I swear I don't even actually. Let me just take a look at his overall numbers. I feel like every time he looks up, though, he's got like 10 or 15 fantasy points, and he's 2,400. So I don't really want to use my first base spot on these guys, but I do think Brett Anderson is not like, look, he's got a 2.5 K prop, which, by the way, I like that over bet on this K prop as an individual bet, but I still think Phillip Evans is also 2.4. You can get a really cheap complimentary stack with Pittsburgh, and I don't mind doing that. I don't want to get more than probably 2 or 3 of them, but between Reynolds, Hayes, Stallings, Nagowski, and Evans, I will probably have, if I was playing 20 lineups, they probably would be in one of them each. That's about how high I have them. Nothing crazy.
Yeah, the closest thing I have to a play here is a guy I'm probably not going to play, which is Kevin Newman. So that was.
Yeah. You do have Newman now. Yeah, we have no more Adam Frazier, so this lineup's even a little bit weaker than usual. So. Yeah, Newman should be leading off at 2.4. So that actually is interesting. If you need a total pure punt at shortstop, I'll put him on my list of value players. So. All right, let's talk about Washington, Philadelphia. Pitching wise, I'm guessing neither of us are interested in Fedde or Moore.
Nope.
And hitting wise, I am leaning more in the direction of, honestly, I see the argument for both sides here. I like both of them a bit. They're expensive, so it's gonna keep the ownership low. It's a big slate, but you got a good hitters park. I like Soto and Turner a lot, and I will play some maybe Ryan Zimmerman in a 3-man, and you can always make it a 4-man with Carter Kieboom at 2,100, assuming that he's in the lineup. If you wanted to get like that would sort of balance out the amount of overall spending if you play he and Zimmerman with Soto and Turner. And I think Turner's going to have ownership. I think Zimmerman's going to have some. I don't expect Soto to have any ownership, and I don't expect Carter Kieboom or any of these other pieces to have any ownership, including Rene Rivera if you wanted to make it a full stack. I don't mind that. I think more you have a fly ball pitcher in Philadelphia. The ball carries. I think it's an interesting spot to try to take a shot with Washington, especially. And I'm not getting to as much Philly, but I do have I have them in as Deaners, like 10 to 15% of McCutchen, Hoskins, Realmuto, Harper, and Gregorius. That's where my interest is in this game.
Yeah, currently, and this is like really early, I do have Washington as one of the better value stacks out there. You already mentioned Zimmerman and Turner, but I would even throw in some of these other guys like Escobar, Harrison, even Robles. He's 2K. Yeah, I do like Washington somewhat here.
Yeah, I like them too. Only problem with the Robles is and Escobar is that they get some ownership and these guys have literally like zero power at all. And so if we're gonna play them, right, and also if we're gonna use an outfield spot on a guy without power, it just feels kind of dirty, you know. That's my only reason for not. Anything to Philly at all?
I didn't get to that much Philly. The last I thought you were gonna get there yesterday. I thought you were playing more Philly.
I had some of them.
Yeah, but who went off? McCutchen went nuts, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't. I had him in my secondary lineup on FanDuel, not my main one.
I think you'll be able to get to some of these guys. I don't know. I think I like Washington a little bit more.
Yeah, that's how I've got it. Washington. And I like Philly, but I don't have them as high as Washington. Washington is one of my top 5. Philly is not.
Yep, same with me.
All right, Miami, Baltimore. Okay, not interested in either pitcher. Bordering. Okay, so I'm not interested in either pitcher at first glance. Let me just figure this one out because I know Alcantara has kind of struggled lately. It's a weird enough pitching slate where I could see him being a viable option. Baltimore is a weak offense without a lot of lefty anything. And Alcantara is a solid pitcher now. It's a big stadium downgrade. He's going to the American League. I'm probably not going to use him at 8.5. But as an off the board, large field thing, I don't mind if you want to get 10% of Alcantara on DraftKings as your SP1 or 2. I think that there's a path for him here. Probably not going to actually get to it. He's only got a 4.5K prop, and you're looking at Tyler Anderson, for example, as a 5.5K prop with 7K. But I do think it wouldn't surprise me if he had a nice night tonight. I don't feel like he's a guy I want to pick on, which because of the prices of Miami, I don't really want to play anything in this game hitting wise, which is kind of weird. My favorite play would be Adam Duvall, but how are we really going to play these guys at these prices with the guys who we've got left on the slate? That's where I'm sort of having an issue.
Well, let's we'll get to the other guys in the slate, but I think in a vacuum, I think the Miami guys are worth playing. Baltimore's pitching staff is just beyond atrocious. The stadium is a huge upgrade for Miami, and the problem is they stink. Aside from that, but Duvall is kind of expensive, Marte is expensive, and Aguilar might whatever. But I mean, they'll be low owned as a result. You get Ryan Anderson 3,400. This Magnivius Sierra 2,100 if you wanted. Hey, I've stacked worse teams. I think. I don't know about that, but I've stacked worse teams in worse environments. But at least this one's in Baltimore against against Baltimore pitching, right?
Yeah.
At least that's something. So I do have some interest in Miami.
Yeah, I just think by the time I was looking at things, I mean, it's just the guys I have to play these guys for. If they were all 1,000 cheaper like they used to be, I could get some interest. But like, the only real power bats in this lineup are Aguilar, Duvall, Marte, all at great positions today. And there's not really any power left in the lineup other than those guys. So it just kind of worries me a little bit how I would get that to work. But I agree with you about them being low owned. And no one on the planet is going to play Baltimore. So if you wanted to take a one-off, go ahead. I'll just remind everybody, Alcantara does not tend to get hit hard very often. In fact, his home run, he doesn't give up many home runs. And his 2 bad outings were pretty forgivable at Philly and against the Dodgers. I mean, if this was like, a few weeks ago, Alcantara was just cruising. He might even be one of the popular guys today. Anyway, I'm not getting to, I may end up using a tiny bit of Alcantara, but I don't think I'm going to get to any of these hitters, even though I think you could make an argument as a one-off for Mancini or Mountcastle. But maybe depending on where Maikel Franco hits or Austin Hayes, but I just don't think I'm going to do it. It's too big a slate.
In the next game, I mean, we're getting to one of the pitchers. I mean, there's 4 pitchers I think that are gonna garner maybe 20% ownership. But I think Morton's gonna be one of them. He is pretty getting up there. I mean, we were playing him obviously at much lower prices really recently. Yet, I mean, he still probably rates to be a good play here. I don't have him at the top of my list, and I don't know how exciting he is at huge chalk. But maybe he won't be huge chalk. He's 50, he is 9,700. I don't know, man. He's certain 9,800. He's one of the options. That price tag scares me a little bit, but the Mets lineup certainly doesn't. And yeah, I really didn't get to the hitting really too much on either side. Maybe should we be playing some Atlanta guys? I don't know.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
That's pretty much all I had.
Yeah. So I think Morton, so, looking at it, you see the Mets are not a team that strikes out a ton. They've got like 4 spots that do strike out, but then you look at just Morton has pitched against this team 3 times this season, and he's averaging about 1.3 strikeouts per inning, which is very solid. So, he had, what did he have last time? He had 11 in 7 innings. He had 8 in 6 innings, and then I think he had 8 in 7 innings. So I think Morton is very viable. I don't know that how much of him I'm going to end up realistically with. I think the Mets lineup is a little better than it was, but I'm not getting there. I do think like the Mets bullpen has been all right. But you're sort of getting a bullpen-ish game. I don't mind the Freddie Freeman, Ozzie Albies, Austin Riley at cheap and low ownership. And then Jock Peterson at 3.3 should be a guy who we should always consider when he's facing a righty at 3.3. However, with it being a bullpen game and Atlanta with the lefties at the top, well, mostly just Freeman at the top behind him, you could see the lefties coming in. And they've left him in against lefties, but you sort of are losing those at bats a lot of the time because he just doesn't hit them. I'm not saying he won't ever hit one, but he's like a career 150 hitter against lefties with basically no power. So I like a little pieces maybe of Albies, Riley, and Freeman, and maybe a little bit of Jock, but mostly I'm not looking to stack there. Toronto and Boston. We have we just had this matchup in Toronto. You have the extreme hitter that so far as guys have been released. You have the most extreme hitters umpire on the slate in Carlos Torres behind the plate. I'm not sure that's right because Torres was the umpire behind the plate last night, I believe, in this game. So that might be a mistake, but keep an eye on that because I think it matters a lot, especially for a guy like Robbie Ray, who oddly was like chalky against Boston last time this matchup happened and we played Boston at no ownership. I don't think we're going to have the luxury of doing that again today. No one's going to play Robbie Ray today. And you have I do think people are going to get into Boston. I don't care. I understand these are going to be popular. These are my 2 highest targets on the slate as of right now. There's plenty of ways to get different. And even with the ownership, I mean, I think Simeon will be less owned of the quote unquote really good guys. I think that Grichuk, who's really struggling down at the bottom of the order, will be unowned. I think Gurriel, who I always am a sucker for, especially they moved him up because how bad Grichuk's been, hasn't been like going crazy lately, but has immense power. Garrett Richards just gets hit so hard. In general, you want the lefties against Richards, so it's kind of not an ideal situation like that, but it's Boston. These Blue Jays average, over the past 2 years, they average over 6 runs a game there. And I think this is one of the better matchups. You can play Biggio, who shouldn't have crazy ownership, down towards the bottom of the order, as well as McGuire. So I actually really I prefer the Toronto side, but I'm very into the Boston side as well. JD Martinez is one of my favorite plays on the slate. I like Xander. They dropped his price below 5K, which immediately means he bumps up like 10% ownership probably. So he's gonna be a little higher owned. I love Kike. So my highest owned will be JD Martinez and Kike, who also will be 2 of my highest owned players in the slate. And then I'm going to also play the other guy who's going to have some ownership, and that's Hunter Renfroe at 3,200. I really like him as well. And then I'm going to mix in my stacks with some Bobby and Michael Chavis, along with Christian Vasquez, a catcher who's been awful. But I do like both sides of this game quite a bit.
I agree with that. I have Toronto and Boston as 2 of my top 5 or 6 stacks for sure. I mean, what else can you say? I mean, it's a good hitting environment. Both these guys can be gotten, and on their days. I would think that Richards is obviously a lot more vulnerable than. No, I would say not. I shouldn't say a lot more vulnerable. I think it's more likely that Richards gets hit than Ray. But when Ray gets hit, he can get hit pretty hard. And he can walk guys all over the place too every once in a while. He's been much better, obviously, this year. But I do think both teams are in play. I'm not going to play either pitcher. Along with the other guys you mentioned, you probably did mention all of them, but I'll throw in George Springer. I don't know. I forgot if you mentioned him or not. But
Springer, absolutely, yeah.
Springer. And then the Boston guys, Kiki, you mentioned, JD Martinez. I don't know if Bogaerts gets back in the lineup. I mean, these guys are all in play. Renfroe, like you said. Dahlbeck, Chavis. I mean, they're all playable.
Yeah, I really like this spot for Toronto, especially. But I do think, and again, I don't think sometimes the goal is to get off the chalky stacks, and we'll talk about a bunch of other stacks. But also, there are plenty of ways you could stack this at low ownership. I mean, on the Boston side, for example, if you were interested in going that route, you could play Verdugo over Renfroe at 0 ownership. And Verdugo has not hit lefties well this year. That's just an outlier. He's hit lefties well for his career. Robbie Ray has also struggled with lefty power at times. So that would be one way to get different. And then we mentioned the guys that get different on Baltimore. But even Bobby Dahlbeck at no ownership down at the bottom certainly has the power to get you there. So I think there's plenty of ways to stack within the stack that are not going to make it too high owned.
Yeah, I mean, I got 6 teams that I have as top stacks or whatever it is.
Right.
And Boston and Toronto are just 2 of them. You know what I mean? It's not like you have to play them.
Yeah,
I
they're
had Washington
significantly ahead of everyone for me.
What's that?
For me, they're significantly ahead of everyone.
Okay.
Okay. But you're right. You don't have to.
Well, the thing is you could afford them too if you do some funny business at pitching.
Yeah, and by the way, I actually think you should be looking at some Robbie Ray in your tournament lineups, like if you're playing a bunch of lineups, because the guy's got a 7.5K prop here. He's been awesome all season. He gets hit one time by Boston, and I mean, literally in this matchup the other day, he was the chalk pitcher in Toronto, and they were unowned Boston team at 1% guys like JD Martinez, and we almost won all the money. Me and Rody were talking about it. We almost won all the money with it. Today is not going to be quite like that. Let's jump over to your Yankees and the Rays here. You will not get me to play any. Well, okay. So on the Yankees side, okay, pitching, I like both of these guys. Jordan Montgomery is too cheap. I like the Rays lineup in general, but I don't see any reason why Jordan Montgomery couldn't go out there and get 20 fantasy points against this team in Tampa. You have a low run total, 4.08, but for the American League East, that's a real low run total. And then on the other side, McClanahan, I expect to get a lot of ownership, and I understand why. By the way, Montgomery with a 5.5K prop at 6.7 is a pretty good value. 6.5K prop on McClanahan has already been good against these Yankees. The Yankees lineup is not what it used to be. They get to go the stadium downgrade in Tampa Bay. The old creative me, and maybe I'll do it for fun, would say, hey, take a shot on trying to get some guys against the young guy. But this Tampa Bay bullpen is, to me, significantly better than everyone else's in baseball. I think their ERA is like 1.2 since the All-Star break. So I wouldn't stack them, but I do like Giancarlo Stanton and Gary Sanchez as low-owned one-offs at their very affordable prices. I mostly, though, am favoring the pitching in this game.
Yeah, I have Montgomery as one of the values here. So I have like one guy that's ranked all the way at the top of my pitching, and then like as it's been very familiar recently, and a bunch of guys kind of chunked into my second pitcher, second best one, and Montgomery's one of them, and McClanahan's kind of in there too. I only have McClanahan. I don't have him as chalky maybe as you do. I don't. I didn't think he'd get more than 10% ownership today.
Oh, I
just because of yeah, I don't know. He's 9,200 against the Yankees. I don't know. But again, the Yankees are not what they used to be, like you said.
I think the Yankees have the lowest run total on the slate, though.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, they're at a 3.4 run total and a 7.5 K prop. So, I mean, if anything holds true to what Vegas believes with the K props,
Okay.
It's actually, he didn't pitch well last time against the Yankees in Yankee Stadium, but I got that mixed up with somebody else. But I don't know. I think
you were thinking of Manoa, I think.
Maybe, yes, that's exactly right. That's probably what I was doing. But I mean, if you look at it, the only struggle this McClanahan's had in his last 5 outings have been at Toronto, and even those weren't like massive struggles. He actually looked good at times. It's just a tough place to pitch and a tough lineup. This Yankee lineup is just very watered down. So I have a lot of interest in both of those guys.
And I didn't get to any of the hitting myself.
Yeah, I hear you. So here's an interesting one. St. Louis and Cleveland. I'm not going to be playing any Wainwright in American League Park, even against an Indians team that I don't fully trust. I know he's okay. I know all this stuff. I'm just not interested. Definitely not interested in Cal Quantrill. What I'm struggling with is maybe playing a St. Louis stack. The problem I'm having with it is Arenado and Goldschmidt's pricing really do sort of hamstring you a little bit, and they're not like my favorite individual plays. My favorite plays are Dylan Carlson and Tyler O'Neill. Unfortunately, they're outfielders, and we know there's a lot of good outfielders. Tyler O'Neill, especially, I will make somewhat of a priority, but I like Dylan Carlson as well. They're too cheap. I like the American League Park boost. I feel like they can move through the lineup a little bit better. You can always, if you did want to stack it, you could always include guys like either Bader or Carpenter down at the bottom of the order, assuming that's how the lineup shakes out. But mostly, it's weird to say like it's O'Neill and Carlson and Molina are the guys who I have the most interest in here.
St. Louis for me is a top 5 stack, and given ownership and leverage, they're probably my favorite. Okay. If the ownership is what I think. And I agree exactly with your top 2 guys, Carlson and O'Neill. And then I have no problem playing the other guy. I'll play Carpenter, Bader, Edman. I think that I like them a lot. I'm in there.
I like it. You sold me a little bit on my own question mark there.
Yeah.
Other than Jose Ramirez and Cesar Hernandez, I don't have any interest in the the Cleveland stack. I guess the only other guy I would consider is Framil Reyes. That's it for me, and those are just long shot one-offs.
For some reason, I guess the ownership kind of like is high too. Is the wind blowing out in Chicago?
Oh, we're not there yet, but yes, I believe. Let me just get my update.
Oh, I thought we were moving ahead.
No, I thought I was asking you about Cleveland.
Oh no, I didn't get that in Cleveland. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. The wind in Chicago is blowing out 11 miles an hour.
I figured. Okay.
Yeah. So that's with the run total, you can kind of feel that one coming.
Okay.
It is interesting with that with it like that you only have it's a lot of respect for Alzolay actually tonight. I'm surprised to see Cincinnati with only a 4.29 run total.
Right.
My initial thing would be to say, hey, this would be a good over to take. I actually like Alzolay a little bit as a pitcher, but I guess I'll start with I'm not interested. I'm not going to play easy. I don't like him tonight. I just like him in general. I think he's going to be okay. The way I would do this is I will take a shot on Tyler Stevenson as even a one-off 3.9, assuming that he's batting third as usual. I would take Jesse Winker. I think he's a guy who actually I could see getting more ownership of than I originally planned, because at 4.4 and he looks like he's back. I'll take a shot there. Joey Votto is cheap and actually hitting home runs this year. You can get Suarez in there, Aquino, Naquin. All these guys I have more in the 10% range again, but I think you could make an argument just for go ahead and stacking either side of this, but I'm much more interested in the Cubs side of it personally. You have Gutierrez, who's a low strikeout righty. So Patrick Wisdom, 42% strikeout rate on the year. also has like what is like a 380 ISO versus righties against a low strikeout righty. So Patrick Wisdom will go on one of my priority plays today. So will Anthony Rizzo is just too cheap. If you're playing cash, I think you should probably be playing Anthony Rizzo today. I love Chris Bryant. I love the price on him. You got the expensive catcher option in Contreras. This right now I have as my third stack. And then you've got the cheap value in the outfield if you want to use Ortega. And the cheap third baseman with some power, even though he's probably at the bottom of the order, is David Bodie at 2.2 and 2.4 for those guys. So there's a lot of ways you could do this. The problem is I like it more as a mini stack just because I don't want to play Nico Horner. I don't want to play Jason Hayward. I don't want to play too much Rafael Ortega. Everybody else I feel okay with, but I feel like I'd rather mix in like a 3 to a 4-man than a 5-man personally.
So you could Rafael Ortega on Taco Tuesday. I mean, how can you pass that up?
On my list here.
So he's going to be rating to be, obviously a really good value, as will all these Cubs. I mean, Bryant, Rizzo, like you mentioned, pay up for Contreras maybe, Hayward. They rate for me as one of the top stacks, but again, what do you do with the ownership if
I don't think their ownership is going to.
So
I don't think it's going to be like control crazy. I think they'll have ownership, but I don't think it's going to be wild. I mean, okay. I think Ortega will get some ownership.
I had them tied with Toronto for the highest owned right now.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I don't have that, but we'll see. I mean, it's a long ways to go, obviously. And the only thing, just caution some people with Ortega, you've had him come out of games a couple times. He's mostly been used as a pinch hitter lately because the lefty starting. Hasn't flashed a ton of power. I personally like the idea of trying, and he's an outfielder, so I would rather play like a Bodie over Ortega get a little bit of power upside at 2.2 rather than Ortega just because he's batting earlier in the lineup. Doesn't, that's the way that I would play it. But again, if ownerships don't stay low, I wouldn't worry too much about it anyway. Arizona, Texas. So what are we going to do with your boy Dunning here at 6.4? What are your thoughts?
I mean, on the one hand, I was going to say he's probably not going to project all that great or whatever, but is Dunning really that much worse of a play than Jordan Montgomery?
Yeah, but in general he is. Like, the guy almost never gets 5 innings pitched, but his actual numbers and how he looked, like his statistics and everything, are strikeouts per inning are fine. Everything's fine, but you'd want your pitcher to go 5 innings, and he's gone 5 innings. He hasn't gone more than 5 innings since May. Slate's too big. That's how it feels, but he's 6.4. So I hear you, but maybe you could make an argument for maybe throwing him into one lineup with Jordan Montgomery or something. You know what I mean? Yeah. But otherwise, it's hard to see him with the upside. He does have a 5.5 K prop for a 6.4 pitcher.
We said this before, right? Remember, I'm like, how is Dunning have a 5.5 K prop, and then he ended up getting there?
Yeah, I mean, but it's funny is he has a 5.5 K prop, but he hasn't been above 6 since May 9th. Right. But maybe those are somewhat game flow oriented. Arizona, one thing, they don't strike out as much, but they do chase early in counts. So maybe you can work through some quick innings and get that 5+ innings, maybe 6 even. Widener's too expensive and gives up tons of hard contact. But actually, if you look at Widener's strikeout per inning, I mean, he had 8 and 4 2/3 his last time out, 5 and 4 before that. He's basically had more than a strikeout per inning in all of his starts except for 2. Oh no, I guess it's except for 3. So, but I actually think with a fly ball pitcher like Widener who gets hit hard, you could take like a Gallo and Garcia or Lowe against him. But I don't want to get crazy with hitting in this game. Those are just interesting little one-offs that I thought of.
Did you have any we go on to the next game. Did you have any Jorge Soler last night?
Yeah, as I had mentioned, I thought he was a good pivot off of the other guys, but I didn't pull the trigger enough because I got into my mini White Sox stacks or fully White Sox.
Yeah, I kind of suck. I play Soler so freaking much and just didn't do it last night.
I mean, the weird part is it didn't work out for most people who did, by the way, because they played because they played it with a KC stack and KC did nothing.
Oh, right.
It was literally they did absolutely nothing except for him. So, So I think Cease is as a 5.5K prop here. I don't love taking pitchers against KC. I still believe in Cease's talent. I just don't think I'm going to be able to pull the trigger tonight. That's where I'm at on that one. And Brad Keller, I mean, you see the giant total. Brad Keller is a guy who keeps the ball on the ground a lot, so it can be very frustrating to stack against. But I definitely have some interest in these prices for these White Sox. Eloy is going to be popular. He's the 2.5K, and we all remember how good of a hitter Eloy actually is. You've also got Andrew Vaughn at 2.6K. And then my favorite play on their side is Yohan Moncada. I absolutely love here. He's one of my home run calls of the day. Goodwin, and then Tim Anderson and Abreu. Abreu probably, maybe I should give Abreu a little bit more credit than I currently did. I don't think you're going to have a ton of ownership considering how high the run total is. So I'm interested in the White Sox. I have them just beneath Toronto, Boston, Chicago. So I have them just beneath the Cubs, I guess, along with Washington. Those are my main ones.
I guess that's fair enough. To have the White Sox as kind of a secondary option. I don't know if I'm going to get there. This game was kind of cross-offish for me. I thought both pitchers were competent, and both hitting environments were competent.
That's fair.
I just didn't think that any of them was going to get there on a 14-game slate.
That's fair. I mean, for what it's worth, I don't understand these run totals every time against Brad Keller, because he keeps going out and, other than one start against Boston and one start against the Yankees, he's kind of been dealing a little bit. Actually, his last 3 starts, he's gone 19.
Good, man. I mean,
20.
The KC, I was watching some of the game last night. Even the announcers were talking about it. The KC pitching staff is not bad. I mean, their Minor keeps on pitching well. Then they got Bubic he's coming along, and Keller, and another guy too who's supposedly not. I mean, they're not bad.
Yeah. I actually don't think now that I look at it, I think I'm actually going to have one more team ahead of the White Sox. I think I'd have the White Sox more as a mini stack here. Try to use some of those lefties with either like Moncada and Goodwin with Jimenez, and maybe one of Anderson or Abreu. That's a 3 or 4 man. I do like Gavin Sheets if he's in the lineup as well. Your man. We have to play a little Sheets if he's in. You got a fly ball hitter versus a ground ball pitcher who doesn't have a high strikeout rate, and that's what Sheets' problem is. So if Sheets is up there in the 2-hole, I'm definitely going to have a lot of interest in Gavin Sheets. All right, Detroit, Minnesota. Maeda's I have significantly ahead of basically everyone, with I guess you could say one exception. It's partly price induced. It's partially matchup. We've seen him do well and do poorly in this matchup. Although his last 2 times out, he's averaged 20 fantasy points. I would take my 20 fantasy points from a pitcher today. I think he's got upside on that. 6.5K prop, extreme pitchers umpire, most extreme on the slate. Everything is leading me to Kenta Maeda tonight.
I think between him and McCullers, I think Maeda is probably the most popular pitcher on the slate, and I think probably for good reason. I mean, he's very, very cheap in a very, very good matchup. I also do like, by the way, on the hitting side, I like the Minnesota hitting as well. I have them as just right on the bottom of my top tier. Let's put it that way.
Right.
I had, Cubs, Washington, Boston, St. Louis, Toronto, Miami, I mentioned before, and then Minnesota. But is Tyler Alexander, is he the guy that I'm not supposed to attack? The guy that who's not that bad?
No, that's the other Tyler. That's the one for Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay.
So you're welcome. You're welcome to attack this Tyler Alexander.
All right. I think I might do that. Sano, Donaldson, Kepler, Polanco. I guess Celestino's cheap enough.
Yeah, so I would go Astudillo, assuming that he's in the lineup. Brent Rooker, again, I mentioned this guy. He's the one who talked about him yesterday. The lowest batting average to ever break a no-hitter. He had a career batting average of .091. But since then, he's hit 3 home runs.
He did.
And he hit another one last night. And he actually has pretty good power from the minor league numbers. So I don't mind Brent Rooker, and cheap on both sides. Sano I tend to prefer against righties. By the way, he had a nice night, hitting the ball. He just didn't end up, 2 for 4 without the home run. It was unfortunate, but when he wasn't striking out, he's hitting the ball 110 miles an hour. they're going to be popular. Garver, Polanco, Donaldson, and I'm here for it, especially Donaldson, who seems to have found his bat. But I would say you can mix this up if you wanted to get different. I don't think Rooker will have a huge amount of ownership, especially if he's not at the top of the order. He might be down in the 6-7 spot. Astudillo and Kepler would be the differentiators for me.
Yep.
And you could always see Larnach back in the lineup, by the way. Don't be surprised. That guy's going to be a stud someday. So I'm with you. I think that's what I was going to say. I think Minnesota, I have a little bit ahead of the White Sox, but again, probably similar in that I want a 3 or a 4 man. The only reason I usually want to attack Detroit's bullpen to the fullest. I just feel like we're not giving enough credit to the fact that this Minnesota lineup is really a lot weaker without Nelson Cruz, between the walks and the power upside and all the hitters around him getting a giant boost with him in the lineup. And then you've got a bottom of the order with Simmons, Astudillo, and Celestino, who have, no power between them. So it's kind of a little bit weaker of a lineup. But they do have Garver back. So Colorado and the Angels. I can't get to either pitcher. If I got to one, it would be, I actually think maybe
you could get to Gomber.
Maybe it's a mistake not to have Gomer on my list a little higher. What do you think? Explain some Gomer.
Yeah, he's not really projecting all that great, whatever. But the guy freaking brings it. I mean, he's good. I'm telling you, he's good. And the last three starts were in freaking Colorado. One of which, by the way, scored 28 fantasy points against San Diego. And now he's back on the road, and there's still no Trout. He's got a 20, a 30, a 27, a 28. Big slate, I don't know. I don't know. I think I kind of want to do some of this.
I'm into it. You sold me. I'll get a little bit of Gomer tonight. It's a little tough going to the Park, but I'll get a little bit, maybe in my big entry 10% or something like that. And then I almost had no interest in the bats here, but on the other side of the game from Gomer, I will definitely be playing a heavy amount of Justin Upton. Too cheap. The power numbers versus lefties are too hard to ignore. And Phil Gosselin is a 2-man if you want to play a 2,200 outfielder. I'm just going to mention his name because he's really, really cheap. But I'm not getting to much else. The only other one I could see getting some exposure to would be Trevor Story. People don't like playing him outside of Colorado. I'll take the no ownership against any lefty with Trevor Story anytime.
So I was watching the Toronto game a little bit yesterday, and Bichette hit a homer, somebody hit a home run, or they were talking about him. And Toronto apparently is either third or second in team home runs this year.
Right.
And if I gave everybody a guess on who the number 1 team in home runs were, I bet you that very few people that play DFS would come up with it in like 10 guesses. And the answer is it's from this next game, and it ain't the Dodgers.
I know, it's pretty wild.
It's crazy, right?
The problem is, like, 3 of those guys aren't playing anymore. They platoon the rest of them, so you've got guys who are going to get 2 at bats.
Right.
I mean, look, I don't care. You're not playing any San Francisco bats today.
No. I just felt it was kind of a fun thing to kind of throw out there. I actually do like Urias a little bit today. Not a top player or anything like that, but he's certainly right in there on my list of pitchers to screw around with. So I do like him. I didn't get to Logan Webb, and I didn't get to any hitting.
I am not getting to any hitting as well, really. I would rather.
Any Urias or no?
This is where I'm struggling a little bit. His run total just jumped, by the way. I don't understand why there's no interest at all in Urias. Because of that, I'm going to have some. So
I have him at like 15%. I mean, I have people.
Maybe I'm looking at something that's wrong then, because I just had a feeling that he was getting completely overlooked today. And I just think that's a mistake. Like, he's a really, really good real life pitcher. It's a huge upgrade from a team. He just pitched 7 innings of, what did he give up in that game? 1 run or 2, 1 run, put up 21 fantasy points. Look, I'll take my 20s tonight.
You know what the thing is, Bobby. It's like, and this is one of the reasons why Maeda is going to be such a good play and kind of so popular. Also, is you look at, I mean, Maeda is cheap and a good matchup. You know what I mean, and all of it. And all these other guys are like, Morton's fine, but he's expensive, right? McClanahan, you can even make the case he's expensive against the Yankees. Urias is playing is 9K against San Francisco. So there's always a little. Every dog has these dogs have a little bit of fleas. Then we'll get to McCullers, who obviously is in a dream matchup. But he's like $1 billion. You know what I mean? So I guess this is why Maeda is going to be just such a kind of smashy type play, because he's got like all those factors going for him.
Yeah, that's. Anyway, I like Urias.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's yeah, I don't know what to say. But yeah, that's pretty much all my interest in this game. I'm seeing if they had any one-offs because I do sometimes like to take a one-off and just go. And I mean, I honestly, like, I would just say the Dodgers, like, if this game was during the day, I would take some shots on Dodgers stacks. I just hate playing that stadium at night. I don't know what the temperature is. I have to double check that before game time, but unless it was like 90 degrees, rare, like it never has ever been in San Francisco, I don't think I could really get there. This is an interesting game. Paddock against Caprillion, Oakland, San Diego. Both pitchers with a 5.5K prop. I thought Caprillion was sort of like it is really sneaky. It's not something I'm going to do, but I don't think it's wrong on this kind of a pitching slate. I will put him in like maybe 1 out of 50 lineups, maybe. Maybe that's how far I would need to go. But I think Paddock, I have a little bit more interest in with Oakland coming to the National League. They have power in their offense. Paddock is frustrating as hell. Tends to be better at home. He's 8,100 and has some upside. Yeah.
All right. So going into this year, right? Actually not going into this year, even towards the end of last season, whatever it is, people kind of resign themselves to the fact that, Paddock really isn't like a strikeout pitcher. Like he's actually, more of a control type pitcher. And then, so he starts off this season or whatever, and then I'm just going back to, the end of May. He had like 6 strikeouts, 9, 11 strikeouts. He was getting a leash. He had 93, 94, 84, 87 pitches. Now, I don't know what happened, but he started like not being allowed to pitch, not striking anybody out. In his last out, he pitched 5 innings, freaking 1 strikeout, 77 pitches. You know what I mean?
I know.
And before that, 80 pitches, 75 pitches. I don't know, man. I don't know what's with this dude.
It's funny, when he came into the league, his changeup made it hard for lefties to hit him. And now when he faces the lefty-heavy teams, he can't seem to strike anybody out. And Oakland is not a lefty-heavy team. They're right. I mean, he had 11 strikeouts against Cincinnati not long ago. And Cincinnati's a hard team to strike out, and they're also chock full of a lot of righties with a couple of lefties that also have high K rates. So I'm not like in love with the Paddock thing. I'm just saying he's on my list for guys. I do have a little bit of interest in him. With Oakland coming to the National League, and Oakland does have some strikeouts in their lineup, especially from the right-handed side. But I'm not in love with it. Also, you do have one of the lower run totals in the slate for Oakland. I'll be above the field on, assuming it's 10% for Paddock, I'll be above the field on that. I don't know how far yet, but I definitely will be above the field. All right, so this is interesting. So we've got McCullers and Houston against Seattle. In case anybody else hasn't heard me talk about this enough, it's not really fun to try and pick on Chris Flexen. I mean, look at the last time you would have been really happy with it. Like, this guy, even when they get to him, they don't hit home runs. Like, he's had the one crazy bad outing against San Diego, which was a million years ago at this point. I'm not playing Chris Flexen. I'm just saying it takes away some of my, you think low strikeout-ish, Houston, okay, we can get on board with the late night hammer here, but I like Kyle Tucker. I like Brantley. I like the pricing. I just don't think fully stacking Houston is a great way to go. But now that no one's going to do it, I probably will have a little bit of exposure, but mostly it's going to be to the Tucker, Brantley, Altuve, who's too cheap. Altuve is way too cheap, by the way. Those are the guys who I have as my priorities there.
Yeah, I will also, let's start off by saying that I mean, I'll just throw it out there that, I mean, honestly, of McCullers' last, well, however many starts on the board here, only 2 of them you're going to be particularly happy with.
Yes, I know. I keep saying this about him. He's not. They pull him too. If he gets in trouble, they pull him.
And Seattle, man, they could be giant killers. You know, I'm not locking in McCullers under any circumstances today.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, in cash games, I guess he's the best play, I suppose.
Yeah, he and Maeda.
You know, you hit him Maeda, but I don't need to do that. He's certainly rates to be a good play, but again, if you go to True DFS, if you're on there, you look at my sheets the way I rank them. I mean, he's just going to look like a guy, and he's not going to look like anything special. And he's going to be, yeah, him and Maeda will be the 2. That'll be the chalk pair, right? That's fair enough.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of in the mood to do Maeda something else. That would be my. You know what? If I could get away with like a Maeda Gomber or something sick like that, then I could be in business. I don't need to play Maeda and McCullers together. You know, it's because, to be honest, I don't really have that off the board stack that I really want. You know what I mean? Unless maybe, what's the closest thing I discussed? St. Louis? I guess that's the closest thing.
St. Louis is, yeah, I don't think they're going to have much ownership at all.
So that's what I could do. What I could do is, whether I could actually code it this way or not, I could say, you know what, the only time I'll play Maeda with McCullers is if I have a St. Louis stack. You know what I mean? Like, I won't play him with any of the chalkier whatever. So I'm not playing Cubs, for example. I'm not playing like Ortega with McCullers and Maeda. You know what I mean? Like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I'm not as worried about the ownership in general today, but I do always want to get lower ownership, obviously. And I actually think somehow, like, I don't know, the Cubs ownership's got to jump as the day goes on because it's really low right now. They've been really bad, but this is a great spot. I like McCullers. There's other guys I can see a bus path for him. I do think that he's got the highest upside on the slate, so I'm probably going to end up having him in a decent portion of lineups.
Yep.
But I don't think that it's like a lock by any means. And, you know, remember, wait to see how lineups shake out. You know, you never know if you see somebody in a different spot in the order. One thing that's interesting is like if, you know, there's just the one thing about this Houston thing. I know it's flexing and I don't like to pick on him, but they are really, really cheap for Houston. Every position. Correa is too cheap, other than Gurriel and Alvarez, who are appropriate. Everyone else is just so cheap. So I do have a little bit of interest in some of the Houston bats, but we can recap now if you want. Go ahead, Sheets.
Yeah, I happen to like, by the way, on FanDuel, I happen to like Maeda and Morton more than McCullers, actually.
Maeda, Morton. Yeah, Morton on FanDuel at 8.6 definitely seems to make a lot of sense. What's weird is Morton has probably a bigger leash than McCullers, unless McCullers is pitching perfectly.
Yeah.
Just to look at the 6-inning side of it. All right, so let's go with who are you looking at now for pitchers? I guess I can run through my guys. I have Maeda as my highest owned, and then I'm struggling. I do probably have McCullers as my second highest owned at the moment, but I'm mixing in Urias, McClanahan, Montgomery, Paddock. I'm sorry, Little Paddock, and then Charlie Morton with Robbie Ray as my long shot pitcher of the day, who, by the way, has the highest K rate on the slate along with McCullers, even though he's projected to give up 500 runs.
And before you go into stacks, my pitchers, I had Maeda, like, clearly the best, and then like a whole bunch of stuff like Montgomery, Morton, McCullers, McClanahan, and then I'll throw in some Gomber just because. What about your stacks?
Stacks, I have Toronto 1, Boston, Chicago, Cubs, really close for number 2. White Sox mini and Chicago mini and Minnesota mini stacks, 3 and 4 mans. I have next, and then I have Washington and St. Louis.
Rankings for me right now are Cubs, Washington, Boston, Miami, St. Louis, Toronto, and Minnesota. Watch for ownership on Chicago, but I do think that cool little I wouldn't say leverage, because it's not like you're getting leverage as a pitcher or anything, but I think a cool low owned low-owned opportunity would be St. Louis.
Yeah, I'm sort of coming, your Gomber call, I'm starting to get into that idea a little bit. And I would just say, though, in a similar arena, like Gomber and Tyler Anderson are both going to be unowned, and they're 7K and 7,100 with a good K prop against weakish offenses. That might be something to look into. You could just, and you could play whatever stacks you want. If you did that, you're going to get a combination of 8% ownership. But that is something I might do, or play one of those guys with Montgomery to get down at the bottom, who also has a 5.5K.
The Montgomery thing scares me, Bobby.
Yeah, I hear you. At his ownership, it makes more sense. I mean, assuming he's high, over 20% owned, I can understand it. If he's not, I definitely will take some shots there. And it's weird because Tampa is one of the best all-around teams in baseball. I was listening to another podcast the other day. I don't want to get way into it and go off on other things, but I'm actually just blown away. Like, these three guys are talking about when did Tampa Bay become a good team? Like, Tampa Bay, this is so weird. They trading for Cruz. Why are they doing so well? I'm like, this team was in the World Series last year. This team,
Tampa's rigged, man. They're amazing.
They're probably the best run franchise in sports because, I mean, for what they've got, they literally get the most out of it, and they get rid of everybody at the right time, and they win every trade. I mean, their team is built on other people's mistakes. So anyway, all right, guys. Well, hopefully that was helpful. I will be back. I'll do my 5 and 5. I will have updated all my sheets by the time you see this. And Sheets has got his sheets out there. Check out TrueDFS.com. 1 month free, 35 a month after that. But check it out to see if you like it. If you don't, you can always jump off. If you like it, stick with us. We got a lot of people in there. It's a lot of good people. And we hope you all crush it tonight. Good luck, everybody.
What we'll do we'll do live, but if you could start it, because I'm going to be out east.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Good luck to everybody tonight. See you at 6 Eastern.
Later.